Hello there, welcome to another episode of Fort Triumph with Ungainly Titan. And as you saw from the brief glance at the load screen there's a new update. That at least is one change. They've brought in a kind of a proper load screen. So 0.9.1 is the current update. I have no idea what this update did. It doesn't have any patch notes on Steam that I can see at the moment. So I've managed to do the Goblin contract. So now I have the 3 chapters done, and with the 3 contracts that were available at the inn. And while I have some hints from Stevens about what happens next, I don't have much more than that. And essentially what's happening now is I've gone and, I've completed the Goblin chapter, and you'll see it anyway. I'm going to kind of spoiler the thing slightly. But if you're watching the playthrough, you're probably not too worried about being spoiled that much. And essentially you get into the goblins. The goblins are being attacked by the undead. And they have their own beliefs. The Goblin Chief has a belief, basically, that the undead are attacking the goblins because he beats Claude the Necromancer at cards. Probably not the case, really. But I've done essentially, you start off, you save a village, or fail to save the village, but you do rescue Stevens, and then you go off to the inn and you find 3 contracts, and it's all very cliche D&D so far, aside from the combat system, which is, I think, the real strong point and selling point of this game. It's what's attracted, I think, a lot of people to it. So you come along, this is the bridge fight, and it's a bridge fight with a proper bridge. I'm going to just have an aside for the moment about what I was talking about, and I will develop the rest later on. I had more than one bridge fight, and I had more than one go at this particular bridge, because you may have seen warnings on load screens if you've played the game, or if you've been watching my videos of me playing the game, you may have seen warnings on load screens about fire spreading. And mostly I've had a problem with fire because I've never set buildings on fire. I have generally been fairly careful when I use fireballs in villages to focus on something that's fairly isolated. And I've never had a problem with a fireball spreading and burning down the forest in a random encounter map. But fireballs burn down bridges, and they burn them down really fast. So no matter how tempting the target of a large number of spiders clustered together is for a fireball attack, it will spread across the bridge really, really quickly, and it will burn everything on the bridge. It will burn the ropes, the stanchions, all the crates and boxes, the characters, the bad guys, everything. So, yeah, be careful of fireballs. Particularly on bridges. The bridge itself seems to stay functioning, and certainly after the encounter, the bridge is still there. Now, most bridges that you haven't crossed before seem to be hostile, and they start out hostile, and then it seems you get a flag on them that makes them friendly after a while. Don't know if it's a flag is because they're friendly because you've then furthered the story mode, or whether it's just something you've done. I've noticed that there is at least one random encounter fight in a location based fight where we won, and it now seems to be a location marked with our little party flag. I've also been playing around a little bit with the customization on the units, but to be honest with you, I think it isn't worth it, and I think the developers should leave it alone, that there are other things with the game that needs work. I've been reading up a little bit about the company. This $78,000 starter Kickstarter kicked it off. Don't know, and they've been financing obviously with the startup, the Steam early access games. Is obviously also been financing them. I've no idea what kind of levels they've sold at though. So it's it seems to me it's a pretty low budget game. Nobody's making any kind of serious money out of this game, at least not yet. However, I do think that in some ways, things that are easy to implement, like the stuff that they did with the character customization, probably not worth it. Because aside from Ruby's hair, it's not terribly noticeable. There's not a big variety of colours. And for instance, the ranger character, Dawn, is dominated by that big cloak she wears. So you're looking at her from behind always, and that cloak doesn't change colours. So it's only when you get the close-ups. And then the icons don't change. So in all the dialogues that you're looking at it, mostly you're looking at it from a distance, when the colours are in an isometric view. So the colours don't stand out hugely, and they don't change on the dialogues, they don't change on the icons. And I'm beginning to think that there may be other things that might be a lot more important in the grand scheme of things. There's also people asking for male characters. Probably a trivial enough thing in terms of art assets. I suppose that people want it. But again, it doesn't strike me as something that should be a huge priority. The game, I think, I've, like I said, played through the initial content, and it just strikes me that it has one big fundamental problem. And that is to the campaign itself. I think a lot more resources needs to be put in on the campaign side, on the story and the history of the background of what's going on, because at the moment you have a very, very engaging, entertaining combat system, but it needs something to hang off of. You have a party, and they have kind of, yes, their own kind of distinct personalities, but the thing is, they're fixed personalities, and every replacement member is going to be getting the same dialogue lines and the same routine as the characters that you start out with. So there's nothing unique about them. They're interchangeable. They're a bit like XCOM characters. Now, XCOM characters got extremely powerful as they developed. For instance, a colonel level character in XCOM is really powerful, and I don't think so far from what I've seen in the game here that the power levels ramp up anything like a high level XCOM character. I mean, there's nothing equivalent of the headshot double tap squad sight effect that you'd see on an XCOM character. But the bad guys aren't ramping up either. You know, the bad guys are more or less the same bad guys you face throughout the whole adventure so far. Now, it may change, they add chapters, and they may be a graded or a more substantial upgrade, but every upgrade in XCOM was a big upgrade, and the fights were generally very, very tough, and they didn't take a whole lot to make them a lot tougher. I mean, if you didn't pay attention in XCOM and you didn't increase your squad size in time, or you didn't do the 2 squad sizes things, or everybody starts with a promotion stuff quickly enough, you can find yourself grievously outmatched in combat. And if you were fighting with too many rookies in the later stages, you had pretty much no chance. But one high level character could make, even if the rest of the party were rookies, could make a big difference, because the power level of that character, as long as you could protect the character and keep them going in the squad, they were very, very powerful. There's nothing like this going on in this game. And by the way, in this part of the video this is the actual Goblin fight. You've met up with the scavengers, because they're the faction that are paying you basically to do this, and You may notice there's a sound glitch. That's not a problem with the game. That's a problem with my video editing software. I don't know what happened, but for some reason when I split the video to edit out this particular battle, the Goblin town battle, the audio went out of sync, badly out of sync. And I have a cheap video editor. It's good enough for what I do most of the time, but it doesn't do sophisticated sound editing. I mean, it does a reasonable amount of stuff, and I can do overlays and put in music and audio ducking, and I can do quite a lot of video production stuff, but what it doesn't do is kind of frame specific or cued video editing, sound editing, so that the sound editing went adrift very bad, like 3 or 4 seconds adrift from the motion, and so the sound would be dead in the dialogue you're having now, but the guy be still sounded like he was walking. That sort of thing was going on, and the Goblin would die from an Overwatch action, and then our sound would go before or after. I can't remember which direction it went out of sync in. It's still not right, but just to let you know, it's not a problem with the game. It's a problem with my video. Something happened. I don't know what it was. But I didn't have a separate copy of the original source files, so we have to live with it. However, having done the 3 combats, I think the story is a little too weak and they need to work on it a bit more. And I need to start making a list of things that I notice as well. I have some minor things that I'd like to talk about as well, but I think one of the big problems is that you don't walk away from this game and think, I must start a session again soon to find out what's happening next. That kind of compulsion hasn't been created. And I think at this stage of into the story, you ought to be feeling more engaged, more determined to find out what's going on, and why is the undead dude doing his thing? Why did he wake up now and not some other time? It's obviously connected. All the things are probably connected, but I think the game needs to be giving you a few more hints. I think that might be wise to take a leaf out of the Tomb Raider reboot. No, I haven't played the new Tomb Raider, or the original reboot that came out, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago. When you were going around the island, you were finding bits of diaries of various people from various eras, and those bits of diaries were giving you background, and they were enhancing the mystery, and they were making the story more compelling and more real, because you now suddenly became interested in how does all this stuff connect together, and what is going on, and what is the solution to the problem. I think they should be using the world map in that kind of a fashion, that you should be getting some kind of historical hints, and they probably need a story specialist, somebody whose just job is to develop a compelling story for the framework that they build the combats around, and give you, the player, a reason to want to know what happens next. Because it is a very enjoyable game when you're playing it. I mean, I could sink 4 or 5 hours into this game, no problem, once I start. But if I go away from the game, I could go a month, 3 weeks, without playing it again. And I think if a game wants to take off in the modern world, this is my own personal opinion, I'm no expert, but my own opinion would be that the game needs to draw you back to the game when you're not playing it. That there needs to be something in it that makes you empathize with the character, or just curious about the story, or some compelling reason to come back in and play this game again. And this one is dependent, I think, on story, because that's the mode they've chosen, and they're kind of stuck with it now. The other alternative would be as kind of a competitive game, or the resource management element that you had in XCOM. I mean, XCOM was driven by resource management, not by the story. XCOM has the same one more turn thing that an RTS has, or a Civilization, or Masters of Orion, or games like that. Because every turn you press the scanner thing on XCOM, something happens. You get a new starship, you get a research project develops, troops arrive, reinforcements arrive in your base, you've built plasma weapons or laser weapons, or something has happened, and there's a reason all the time to press the buttons to get the turns to cycle until the next thing happens. The aliens are abducting, they've landed, they're doing a terror mission. There's a compelling reason to do the next thing. There's a clock, there's a counter, there's something going on, and if you don't do the next thing, or you're find like in sometimes in UFO, I found myself to be resource constrained. You didn't have enough Illyrium, or you didn't have enough alien alloys, and you were basically hanging around waiting for a UFO to appear so you could shoot it down to get alien alloys, or Illyrium, or muton corpses, or whatever. This game doesn't have that, and it needs an element of that. It needs some reason to pursue the chapters other than just that they're there, and it needs some reason to keep you thinking about the central mystery of what's going on. And I think the world map should be giving you some kind of either hints about what's going on currently, or hints about a previous occurrence of it, so that you have backstory, so that you have depth to the universe, and that in itself then, and there should be some clock, something that you need to go and do the stuff for, or otherwise something bad will happen. It's not RPG enough to run on RPG lines. This isn't like Baldur's Gate, or Neverwinter Nights, or Dragon Age, or any of those things, because the characters are not sufficiently unique to become invested in the character itself, because you're not meeting people, you're not having dialogues where you're picking quests and going on quests and establishing a personality to your character, and they're essentially generic interchangeable combat units as it stands. So the story itself, the NPCs need to be a lot stronger, because they're the ones that are going to drive the story. You've got to actually care about something in the NPCs to drive the story, or else you've got to have some other driver, something that's going to make you go out there and want to do this when you're not playing the game, make you want to come back to the game to continue to find out what happens next. I think that's the biggest weakness. It's a great game when you're playing it. It is very enjoyable, and it can sink an arbitrary amount of time, just like the its sort of inspirations. But the trouble with it as at the moment is that when you go away from the keyboard, you put the game down, there's nothing terrifically compelling about making you want to come back. And I think that's the single biggest weakness this game has at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite enjoying it when I'm playing it. But if I hadn't engaged to do YouTube videos on it, I might very well be playing XCOM 2 right now. Or Civilization 6. I started Civilization 6 yesterday. or any of a dozen other games, I must actually go back and play some more Neverwinter Nights. In fact, I must edit the footage of Neverwinter Nights and to play it some more as well. I noticed that World of Warships Legends is coming to Xbox, and I should probably play more World of Warships just to learn how to play it. And maybe I'd stick with it on the PC. I don't know. I'll definitely try it out on Xbox. But I just think this game has, like here we have the final, so we'll say, encounter with the Goblin Chief. So you find out that, he knows about Claude, and he goes on about his bluff and cards. But he's campaigning about taking over the fort. But like, the problem here is, yes, taking over the fort, but why do we care about the fort? Why does the fort matter to us? I think the taking over the fort should be on some kind of time clock, where you have, because they have a calendar, they have a thing, and given the way the game operates, it should be possible to lose the game. It shouldn't be like, I think they've gone too much into the RPG without making a game that is an RPG. The thing about the RPGs, you get invested in the characters, and the characters have personal quests of their own. So if you have a party in an RPG, usually the party members have some personal quests that they give you at some point in time, like they did in Neverwinter. Both of the Neverwinters, the party members had various personal quests. Now, some of them in Neverwinter were kind of contradictory, or even people who you interacted with. The second Neverwinter, for instance, had a very excellent piece where one of the main companion NPCs was somebody you met initially on the adventure. They were targeted by the same bad guys that you were targeted. You met the person became an NPC. You undertook personal quests for that person, and that those personal quests arced back into the main story in a very tragic way, which kind of again compelled you to move on and gave you a reason to be interested in the whole thing. That's just lacking in this thing so far. And by this stage, I have played, 10, 12 hours of the game. I should be invested at this point. I should be invested in the story. Whereas I'm largely indifferent to the story. The entertainment out of the game really is the whole business of the tactical combat. But I don't think tactical combat on its own against automata, against NPCs, is going to compel people to buy the story or buy the game or make the game a hit. It just is a bit of a weakness, which is a shame, because I think there are some really great elements to the game. I think I'm going to kind of follow it through so far. I'm not giving up on it, but I'm definitely, these are things that I probably want to point out and maybe pick up with the forums, that I think this game it needs something, I think, a bit more dramatic or something to click with people to make it compelling. And I don't think the story as it stands is cutting it. I think the problem with it, in my own opinion, is that the party as it stands is partly the tongue-in-cheek elements. The party as it stands are not strong enough personalities on their own, and they have no particular objective. they have no story of their own, no particular quest of their own to complete. So there's no particular reason to be doing any of this other than to set up tactical combat situations. So it's not RPG enough to make a compelling RPG. And the other side of it then is that it's not wargame enough to be a compelling wargame. So they either need to make the story stronger and about the party, so that you get invested in the party members as personalities, and then you need to change it around completely, because you probably need a respawn or resurrection mechanic, or at least one of the party members has to be you, the one you identify with you, and then the companions have to be people that you identify with as companions, and they have their own quests, and this all leads to the compelling story. The trouble is, I don't think they have the resources to do that. That requires huge amounts of writing, and if you lose your NPCs because they've died, and you don't sort of respawn or resave or whatever, and you move on to the next one, then you need fresh NPCs or fresh player companions, because the game only works as a squad level. The combat works at squad level. You can't solo this stuff. The combat is really a squad level tactical combat game. The other alternative would be to make it you can still keep it story orientated, but to bring in some kind of resource management element where there's some MacGuffin you have to get, and you have to do it in a time frame. So you have to, create a base, gather resources, gather people together so as to do whatever it is necessary with the thing in order to get to the next stage, and so on and so forth. And if you don't do the various steps in sufficiently timely a manner, you lose. You lose the game, and then you have to start again. So you're against the game, you're against the clock, you're against something compelling. But as it stands, it's neither here nor there, and it's going to kill the game, I think, in the long run. Because, yes, very enjoyable game when you're playing it. But when you go away from it, why is it exactly that you want to come back? Why would you not play XCOM or Civilization or Stellaris or Mountain Blade Warband, or what you call it? What's the one? The other, Rome Total War, the Total War series, or something along those lines. In fact, with the Total War series now, there was so many individual leaders I've seen them advertising lately that you could probably do something similar. Just playing Rome Total War, Thrones of Britannia, or something like that. Because again, the leadership characteristics matter and stuff like that. I just think like I said, it needs something bigger, something better, just beyond the tactical combat, something to drive the combat, a reason for you doing the missions, or a reason to care. Because it would be a shame, I think, if it just fell flat because it just lacked that connecting, that spine, that connecting tissue or spine that would just keep the game going and make the game compelling. Because it is a very entertaining game, and it's certainly a game that you can sink time into, no problem, once you start playing it. Once I start playing it, I have no problem playing it. And I have no problem playing it for extended periods of time. It's when you stop playing it and go away, you're kind of going, well, maybe I'd rather play Civilization 6. Or I'd rather play something else. You see, it's not a quick in and out type game. You don't get a lot done in a short amount of time. The combats are actually the chapter combats. The little small random encounter combats are probably, I don't know, 5-6 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. But the chapter combats are 15-20 minutes, and they take up a nice chunk of time. But it's the in-between. You've done a chapter and you have found out something, but it's too little. It's and it doesn't, doesn't create any kind of dynamic. I think a resource type, some kind of resource collection, resource accumulation and management type game might be a better way to go, because it might take them less effort to make a compelling game of that type, rather than a story-driven game. I think a story-driven game, you need to have a strong story, you need to have strong characters, and you need to have a narrative that makes you care. And it's just a little too trivial at the moment. It's clever, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's kind of self-aware, fourth wall, Deadpool type thing, but there's no personality, there's no strong personality driving the thing. And if it's not the party, then it has to be somebody else. There has to be somebody that you get invested in saving, or you get invested in making sure they succeed. You see, if we don't stop now, bad things will happen. Yes, but what kind of bad things? On what kind of time scale? I think we need a bit more. We need to know what kind of bad things and how quickly. That sort of stuff, I think, needs to be done more strongly. It needs to be emphasized a bit, and that's it. So you get a few more hints from Stevens at the end, confirming that there's a leak in the Adventurers Guild and somebody's betraying adventurers and stuff like that. But I just think it isn't enough. There needs to be some sense of impending doom. There needs to be some sense that you can fail, and some real consequences for failure. And something that just makes you care and drive the adventure a little bit. Anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please give it a like and share. If you have not already done so, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you all again soon. Bye for now.